give me 1 minute. Well, good morning, good afternoon, a very warm welcome from the Association of Colleges of the Sisters of St. Joseph. This is our presentation about our Puy Student Pilgrimage, and we're so glad that you're able to join us here today. So some housekeeping notes, a gentle reminder to mute yourself, and that this presentation will be recorded. The recording will be available on our website probably next week or the following. This presentation will last for an hour, and our intention is really to provide time for questions during our hour together. So we hope it's a little bit of a participatory experience as well. I'm Martha Malinski. I'm the Executive Director of the Association of the Sisters of St. Joseph. The Association of the Colleges of the Sisters of St. Joseph draws together 9 colleges and universities founded by the Sisters of St. Joseph to articulate and further the contemporary expression of the educational mission and legacy of the Sisters of St. Joseph. Today's participants and leaders participated in our 2023 student pilgrimage that was held in June. And we're so excited to share more with you about our experience and what we learned during our week-long adventures in France together, and also to share with you sort of how participants are bringing their experience back to their home campus. 17 students participated in the June 2023 pilgrimage. 3 participants were gracious and generous enough to allow us to sort of highlight them today. And hopefully a few other participants may be able to join us later in this presentation. The 2023 student pilgrimage was ACSSJ's second student pilgrimage. The first was offered in 2018 in a similar format. The primary goal for the student pilgrimage is to deepen students' knowledge and understanding of the charism and to support students in bringing their experiences back to their home campus to infuse the charism and the history that they learned during their week experience back to their home campus. And in addition to students, this year we were able to support 3 trip leaders who are staff and faculty members, as well as to support really Sister Joan Lescinski and I in leading this trip. A note of gratitude that the pilgrimage would not be possible without the generous support of the presidents at each of our member campuses who made this pilgrimage possible. Over our time together, I will ask panelists 2 questions and ask them to respond to those questions. After that, we'll leave, again, as I said, we'll leave some time for participatory questions from the group and sort of a conversation. So please hold your questions until the end. And I will ask our panelists to introduce themselves now and share a bit about why they wanted to be a part of this pilgrimage and what they had hoped to gain from the pilgrimage from the start. So I'll turn it over to Dr. Ryan Murphy to begin with the introductions. Thanks, Ryan.
Thank you, Martha, and good afternoon, everyone. So as Martha said, my name is Ryan Murphy, and I'm an assistant professor of sociology at Chestnut Hill College in Philadelphia. And I've been at Chestnut Hill since 2005. So my connection with the Sisters of St. Joseph goes back 18 years this month, actually. What I was hoping for in this pilgrimage was really twofold. One, a good bit of my academic research looks at women religious, particularly women religious after the Second Vatican Council. So I've done a bit of writing and research on the Sisters of St. Joseph. So I've become familiar with the sisters' spirituality, their mission, and their charism. So from an academic perspective, I was really encouraged and excited to visit the place where it all began, right? And then I would say on a personal note, I am an associate of the Sisters of St. Joseph, meaning as a layperson, I try to live those values of the mission and charism in my personal life. I think it makes me a better partner and spouse to my wife, who is also an associate of the Sisters of St. Joseph. And I also believe that it makes us better parents to our son, Liam, who is 10 years old. So personally, I was looking to deepen my own connection to the spirituality of the sisters through the experience of pilgrimage. And again, walking those steps back in Le Puy and in Lyon was a great way to connect myself and my own prayer life with the sisters beginning. So, thank you.
My name is Katie. I'm a junior social work major at Fontbonne University in St. Louis, Missouri. When I first visited Fontbonne, going into my freshman year, I remember being really attracted to the story of the sisters, and something about their mission, their heritage, their values really spoke to me. And since I've been a student here, in my social work classes especially, I've been able to learn more about how I can live that out. So when I heard about the pilgrimage and the opportunity to get to walk in the footsteps of the original sisters, I knew that I wanted to do it, one, to learn more about them, but also kind of just to be able to pray alongside their story and get to learn more about their story alongside all the different students from across really the nation, essentially, and hear how they're living out the mission of the sisters in their own lives.
My story is a little different, of course. I have been leading pilgrimages, as Sister Noel knows, for over 20 years at this point. This was my 13th one. And for me, why did I want to go? Well, first of all, Martha asked me. That's always the best reason. And I was privileged to accompany her on the first one, where we went with Sister Kitty Hanley as well. And for me, you might think, well, gee, for a 13th time, does it get to be sort of ho-hum? Absolutely not. The thing about going with a new group each time is I have the privilege to see this extraordinary experience, standing on the very stones the sisters stood on, from a new set of eyes. In this case, 17 wonderful students and the staff who were with us. It deepens my own appreciation of what it is I've been living out for the last nearly 60 years. And I'm very grateful that Martha, with her vision, has helped us realize how important it is to bring people like students and staff and faculty to Le Puy, to Lyon, because the message, the story really is in the very stones. So Martha, again, I thank you for allowing me to be there. And I came home with just a whole new joy again of being there.
Hello, everyone. I'm Sophie Hackes. I am a senior music major at Mount St. Mary's University. What really pulled me into this pilgrimage is being at Mount St. Mary's for as long as I have. It's been such a foundation of my education to have the Sisters of St. Joseph to look up to and to use kind of as this motivational support throughout my academic career. They have really shaped the way I've viewed not just my own academic journey, but everyone else's at my college. And it has made me feel so much more appreciation for the Sisters of St. Joseph. And so to be able to go to the starting place was just such an honor and such a wonderful experience. And it was something that I knew that I needed to do just to become even more so connected to them and their amazing story.
Hi, my name is Joan Horgan. I direct the Spiritual Life Office at the College of St. Rose. And for many of those, I've been there for 31 years. And for many of those years, I got to work with Sister Sean Peters, which was the motivation for initially me getting a chance to go to Le Puy. When I was traveling, I thought, I have to go. Sean's been talking about this beautiful place. So in 2017, I went, but I went as a tourist. And I just got to see this and that and all those sites. And then when there was a chance to go as part of pilgrimage, I knew that was going to be a different experience. And that's what I had maybe been yearning for the first time and couldn't self-create that. So I was really grateful to get to go and to be really immersed in the story in a much different way. And then, as Sister Joan was saying, just to see it through the eyes of students, to see it, the wonder of it, to see the story just deepen in its significance as we would go through each of the days. So it was a great treasure to be there on pilgrimage and not just to see the various sites.
Hi everyone, my name is Morgan Petlin. I am a senior nursing student at Avila University. And originally, when I was chosen by Avila to go on this pilgrimage, I was familiar with the story of the sisters, but I didn't know a whole lot about it, and I enjoyed traveling, so I was like, yeah, sure, like, yeah, I'll go. And once I started learning more about the sisters before we went and all the prep meetings that we had with Martha and Sister Joan, I started to really dive into and learn about the charism of the sisters. And it just made me even more excited to go walk these same streets and walk up or stand on the same stones as Sister Joan was talking about, and just really learn about that charism and more about the sisters that founded my school.
Hi, I'm Sister Carol Allen. I work at Elms College. I'm the special assistant to the president, mission and charism. I was lucky enough that an opening happened and Martha asked me if I'd like to step into it. So I got to go to Le Puy for my third time. You know, it's a spiritual home. You know, this time was no different than the first time. The first time that I went, when I stood in that kitchen, the sensation of knowing that, you know, over 350 years had transpired and the kitchen still exists. And there's just something very holy and mesmerizing about being there. That did not change this time, all these years later. You know, I'm motivated and stimulated by those original women. They're a part of my vocation. You know, they took risks, they embraced their community, they had innovative solutions to address the needs of the time, and their advocacy work has just been promotional in who I've been as a sister of St. Joseph. And, you know, and I think for me, to always see it through others' eyes, you know, it's different for me as a sister of St. Joseph, but to hear about it and see the reaction through, you know, young people, and then my coworkers, Ryan and Joan, you know, to see and hear and discuss all that, it just is reaffirms, you know, my decision to be a sister of St. Joseph. So it's really a blessing and a blessed moment. So I'm so grateful for all of you and for, you know, the challenge that you continue to offer me as a sister.
Thank you for those introductions. It's great to hear about how each person came into the pilgrimage and what they had hoped to gain from it. Just to shift gears a little bit, I'd like the panelists to talk a little bit about highlights, things that stood out from them, but really, what did you gain from the pilgrimage, and how are you bringing that back to campus, into your personal, into your academic life? How has the pilgrimage impacted you? So Ryan, we'll start with you first.
Sure. So this was a really transformative experience for me. I'll say first that I've led a number of student experiences, whether they be service immersion trips or week-long service projects, and worked with a lot of student groups in my years in higher education. And this was not the best, if not one of the best student groups I've ever been with. I was just so impressed with how supportive of one another the students were, how reflective they entered each experience, and just how genuinely present they were in each moment. So that made my role as trip leader easy in a lot of ways because it allowed me to immerse myself in the pilgrimage as well. I will say that as I've reflected on the experience since coming back from France a few months ago, the one thing that I keep coming back to is the experience of movement. And for me, moving through the streets of Le Puy, through the streets of Lyon, climbing up the cobblestone streets to the cathedral, crossing the thresholds of the different worship spaces, climbing the steps to Saint Michel, the chapel at the top of one of the volcanic plugs, and perhaps most importantly, walking part of the Camino de Santiago. Two of the students on our panel this afternoon, Morgan and Katie, were with me along with two other students, Cesar and Matt. And the five of us just kind of found ourselves continuing on the pilgrimage to the Camino pilgrimage walk after the rest of our group had sort of, peeled off back to the cafes and hotels and things. And I will say that stands out as one of the most memorable experiences of my pilgrimage. The time that we spent walking the Camino, the walk that pilgrims have made for over 1,000 years, was just really special. And what I continue to think back and reflect on is that during that time, we certainly talked and laughed and got to know each other, but also how comfortable we were in silence with one another. And I think there's such a beauty in being able to be comfortable in silence with people who you don't know. I don't want to speak for everyone, but I felt something very powerful and very God-driven in that moment, especially. Since I've come back, I've offered a faculty colloquium where I offered a reflection of my own experience as pilgrim. And I tried to lead that as an immersive, reflective experience. So speaking in the third person, inviting the audience members to join me, walking the steps that I walked in Le Puy and in Lyon, looking at pictures and short video clips that I took on my iPhone so that the audience got to see exactly what I saw in those days. And while I'm not a journaler, and I've never really been a journaler, when I came back, as I started to reflect on the experience, I spent a good bit of time writing and processing, and that's kind of how my mind works to unravel meaningful experiences, and this was certainly one of them. So I'm grateful to have offered that on our campus. I was also able to offer that reflection experience to a group of associates, the Sisters of St. Joseph, and I hope to also share it with sisters at our St. Joseph Villa, which is a retirement community for elderly and infirmed and retired sisters not too far from our campus. So.
As Ryan already spoke about, I similarly had a really positive experience walking the Camino. We had gotten a lot of time to get to know each other briefly with the group. We had heard most of the history of the sisters at this point throughout the trip. And we were walking out of the chapel. I actually got to meet a young man named James, who lives in the suburbs of a small French town. And he came up to me and we got chit-chatting, and he asked me why I was there. And I was able to really share the mission of the sisters with him, tell him the history of the sisters, and get to hear a lot about his story. And during that interaction, I really recognized the responsibility that I now have, and that we all now have as members of these colleges. And as I've been passed down the tradition of the sisters, so now I have a responsibility to give back to others, and I have a responsibility to continue living out that charisma to everybody I meet. And since I've been back on campus, I've really done a lot of reflecting and gotten to talk to, I'm on the service and spirituality team at Fontbonne, and I've gotten to talk to some of my other student interns about the sisters, and really spread their mission and spread their history to students that have never heard it before on our campus, or who might not have been listening when they heard it the first time. And so getting to see them learn more, getting to see them go to the chapel and have a different perspective, that's been really, really important. And also just carrying myself in a way that I know accepts my neighbors, accepts the people that I'm in classes with, or the people I see on the soccer field, or the people I see in my different student organizations, and making sure that they know that they're loved and that they're important, and that they are my neighbor, essentially. And I think that's the biggest thing that I brought back, was a responsibility to carry on that mission.
Well, as I said in my earlier comments, what always touches me is seeing these amazing places in my life through new eyes. And as Ryan said, one of the things that touched me was our daily prayer, our daily reflection together, and the silence. Because the students that you have before you and that you know are not living in a world of much silence. There's a constant bombardment of sound, of music, of background. It's almost unnerving, I heard a student say one time, when it's silent. But that for me was very powerful. But I think the thing that touched me most deeply was each night, as we would engage in our reflection around the room, people spoke from their hearts in a way of sharing vulnerability that, and I'm not a crier, as those of you who know me would know, it brought tears to my eyes. That we had, through Martha's wonderful preparation, established a community among us where already we could do a sharing of the heart, as in the our charism and as in our history. So I will never forget the sharings that the young men and young women, students did, and also the leaders. What did I bring back? A resolution to keep the charism that I have been privileged to live these years alive and well, so that I can greet each one I meet as the dear neighbor.
It's so hard for me to think of just one highlight because there were so many within the trip or in the pilgrimage. And it was just to kind of highlight what everyone else has been saying, that community that we made with such little time. It felt like we knew each other at the end of the pilgrimage for years, and it was only a week. And it's very funny because I still keep in contact with quite a few people, and it's so heartwarming to me to know that I have this connection throughout the entire country with so many different people, and people that I honestly probably would have never met if not for this trip. And it's just it's really moving to me to know that this pilgrimage was so deep for all of us, and so emotionally and spiritually connective for all of us, that we were able to bond through that. And so that's kind of what I'm taking back from it, as well as the highlight. Another highlight that I think really stood out to me in terms of like location would be really the kitchen. The kitchen was something that when I walked in, you felt that energy and you felt that connection from all the generations of not just CSJs, but associates of the CSJs and now students. And that was just something that was so validating and soul connecting, I think, for all these different generations of people that have visited the kitchen. And it was really amazing. And it was really funny because when I came back and talking to campus ministry leaders and the heads of the CSJs at my school, it was really funny because they all said the exact same thing, and they all said, "Did you feel it when you went into the kitchen?" And I was like, "Yes, it was crazy." So I think that was a really big highlight for me. Moving forward with what I'm bringing back to campus for the people here is that coincidentally, this year has been for Mount St. Mary's a year that we've had the most freshmen. And so I've been really able to talk to first years a lot, especially through my role as an RA, and talk to them about what it really means to be a part of this community, because they are a part of this community as students, no matter their spiritual background or their or where they come from. And they've all felt really, really motivated, like I had when I was an underclassman, knowing that they have so many powerful women to look up to and footsteps to walk through.
So you get lost in everybody else's stories. I was like, what was I going to say again? But it's true. So I was probably would say that some highlights are repetitive in saying that it was often the gatherings at night when we had all been off different places. You might have waved across a square at people who were running around doing their part, and you were together listening. And I probably, when I started the trip, really had a lot of, maybe concern or worry, like, boy, what are these stories going to say to people this many years later in a world that probably couldn't be more different in some key ways from the original sisters, and yet the human experience having a lot of common ground. So it was really touching to hear each night that this ancient story was also a new story, and that Sister Joan had just done such a good job of in fleshing it all, like it wasn't just a bunch of facts and dates and then this place and this was here, but you just really felt like you were there with them. And I was also struck by the power of storytelling, and that Sister Joan did such a deep and rich job with telling the story. And when I came back to campus, I just had a really strong sense that I needed to offer this story to our community of employees, because we've just been going through a really rough time. And I was thinking that really our employees needed to know, why are you here? And where do you come from? And so I felt just enriched to not, again, just have the information, but to really be enthused about the information, and to have it feel very real and vital. And so where I felt like I could tell the story differently, having witnessed its impact and power in the community that traveled, but also just feeling the history differently and feeling how much that history matters and needs to matter to us all, especially in difficult times. And so I was really felt enriched by it personally, but also I think it was able to be shared in a way that enriched the community at a time of great need.
For me, there are many, many high points on this trip, but two of the ones that stood out to me the most, obviously they've already been said, but one is the Camino, and the relationships that we formed on that trip, was just on that little walk, I guess, on this entire pilgrimage, was just very heartwarming to know, like, we had known each other for probably 4 or 5 days at this point, but like Sophie had said earlier, like, it felt like we had known each other for years, with the connections that we were able to form on that trip. And then another high point for me is the kitchen. And I know Sophie talked about this as well, but at Avila, we have a little mural of this kitchen in our ministry room. And I had seen that every week, as I am a student leader in our community service group on campus. And I was like, okay, yeah, like, it's a kitchen. But once I stepped foot in that kitchen, it brought a whole new meaning to that. And so that's another thing that I'm bringing back to campus, is that I can look at that and I can share that with other students and be like, this is where it all started. And as I lead our ministry group, I've really been trying to take on the charism of the sisters this year, and lead it in the same sense of coming back together after we go out and serve our community and serve the dear neighbor without distinction, and then come together and share all together at the end of the day, which also reflects our little group of reflections at the end of each night we had on the pilgrimage. So it all is coming together for me, and I'm seeing all these little things on campus that remind me of the pilgrimage, and it all's clicking and making sense why Avila has a lot of the traditions that they have.
Tough to take up the tail end. So many things have already sort of been said, but I'm going to attempt to reframe in some of what was said. So I think for me, the sharing of the state of the heart each day, because that truly what it was. You know, we might have called it reflection at the beginning, but the depth of which transpired from the sharing of especially the students was very touching and enlightening. You know, and for me, it brings such, you all bring such hope to the world, that, you know, that you are that light that will shine bright. And not just from this experience, because something drew you to this experience. And you know, you certainly lived it out and became that example of living that charism. You know, it was the depth of vulnerability, I think, that touched me the most. That depth of really searching deep within and what the meaning of your own life and through that experience in Le Puy and Lyon meant. And so, yeah. And then I think the other thing is, you know, for me, I'm not much of a photographer. I like to take pictures, but, you know, you might have legs. Yeah, you might have a head, you know. But I'm just not much of a photographer. I see something, I see the beauty through my eyes, but I can never captivate it with a camera. But Isama from our college did a much better job of that than I did. You know, but the pictures that I hold in my heart, you know, is everybody climbing because I was at the rear, climbing those stairs up to the cathedral, or being, you know, watching folks at the Mass for the Camino blessing. We all can't fit in the kitchen because it's really not that big. So, you know, watching people come out from that experience of being in the kitchen. Those were the sort of the things that I hold deepest in my heart. And I think what I learned was that deep sense of trust that the students had for us as chaperones, but the trust that they had in each other. They never left somebody behind. They embraced each other. They checked in with each other. You know, people went off always in 2s or 3s, and when they come back, other students asked about what their experience was and what their adventure, how did it take them, where did it go? And you know, that is, to develop that sense of community in such a short period of time is really remarkable. And you know, everybody joined in. There were no outliers. And that is a really hard and difficult thing sometimes to have in a group. Many times you'll have an outlier or somebody who just doesn't engage, but that wasn't the case. And you know, I think when I even see students now, I think it's the strength of that experience that they've built on and the confidence that they gained that can propel them forward into doing what they need to do. And so that's my little snapshot of the experience for me.
Thank you, panelists, for providing that snapshot. I know it's hard to, you know, take a full week of learning and experiences and sort of distill it down to one moment or a few moments. So I'm appreciative of that. I wanted to open it up. You know, we had 17 students on the pilgrimage, and we weren't able to ask them all to be here today, but a few others are in the audience today. And so I want to invite them to share a few words about their experience. Isamar or Meredith, would either of you like to share a few words?
Yeah, I'll share really briefly. This has been so wonderful to hear, and so grateful for all the leadership and planning that went into making this happen, and for the students for saying yes to this opportunity. I feel so grateful that I get to lead these groups in March for Mount St. Mary's. And I think, you know, to the points that I've heard here, the thing that I always take away from it is the bonds that are formed on these trips, to see the students walk into the airport, many of them not knowing anyone, and then they leave bonded together by this experience and the history of the sisters, and their experience up at Mount St. Mary's is greatly changed. But I also think that their experience of just living in the world, being people of service, is also greatly changed. They have this incredible example, and now they have an opportunity to see it firsthand. And it's just an honor and a privilege to get to really just, you know, obviously there's a lot of logistical things involved, but to just witness what happens on this trip in these magical cities is, I think that our sisters are watching this and just feeling so much immense pride that we are able to make this happen. And I'm so grateful for all the people who make it happen. And a special shout out to Martha for making this, and to Sister Joan, and then to my friends forever who are not here, Olga and Sister Eloisa, who I just, it's amazing to watch the students get to form those bonds as well.
Thanks, Meredith. I didn't mean to put you on the spot. There's actually a student, Meredith, that was on the trip too, but
oh my God, I am so sorry.
No. It's not every day you have two Merediths in the group, but I think she left. So, but you know, I really appreciate your comments. I mean, I think we have, you know, you and I work very collaboratively in planning these pilgrimages for both ACSSJ and Mount St. Mary's University, and so much of your work and helping students prepare. So what I didn't share with you is that there is a whole network of people, some on this call today and others who weren't able to make it, that really help and nurture and guide the process with students, and both on the front end in selecting students to go on the pilgrimage, helping to prepare them. ACSSJ offers several virtual orientation sessions, but campus ministers and mission officers like Meredith and Sister Carol and Joan and Sister Sharon and Eileen and Nicole are people on the ground sort of helping to nurture the process with students too, and in both on the front end and the preparation, supporting them in the logistics of even getting to the airport and to be on the trip, and then on the back end of supporting, you know, bringing their learning back to campus as well. Isamar, do you want to say anything about your experience on the pilgrimage?
Yeah, of course. Can everyone hear me? Yep. All right. Yeah. So I would say for me, it was an awesome experience just to start, and to add on to what everyone was saying. Yeah, I kind of found it amazing that, yeah, we didn't know each other at the start, but that we kind of just knew each other by the end and everything. I think one of the funniest parts for me was at the airport when we were just all kind of like, all right, who are these people? What do we do and everything? And that was kind of like, all right, how are we gonna make this work? But then by the end, we were just all kind of best friends, and I still talk to almost everyone by today, you know. And some highlights to kind of share about the trip. I felt like what stuck out to me the most is just being at Mother St. John Fonpon's house, because I don't know, I feel like I love learning about people. I love learning about the Sisters of St. Joseph every day. And I feel like by being in that house, I really kind of felt like that kind of overwhelmingness of like, this is what they did and this is where they're from. And it kind of just felt very meaningful just to be there and kind of see like where she grew up, kind of what she started. And I also love the cathedral. I love like the history of everything that was in Le Puy. And I feel like kind of learning about the culture and kind of how everything was, it kind of brought more meaning into my experience because I got to know more about, like I said, the culture. So those were kind of like some of my favorite parts, as well as like being in community with everyone. and kind of getting to know other people. I feel like for me, I love being kind of in that unknown space and kind of figuring that out, and just kind of persevering through that. And through learning all of that, I can say that I really appreciate the gift of service, because now I can bring that back to my college, Elms College, and really just understand that everyone matters and we have to serve everyone, like I said, serving the dear neighbor, and just really loving everyone for who they are. So that's kind of what I took out of it.
Wonderful. Thank you for being here, and thank you for sharing that reflection with us. Well, I know that you all as audience members probably have some questions for panelists and for the group. So I'll invite you to either put your comment or question in the chat or raise your hand here, and I will take your questions one by one. And while we're waiting for those questions to come about, I wanted to, ask the group, our panelists, if there's other things that, as it's so hard to pick one and you hear things from other people. I mean, one of the things that you probably have experienced as audience members is that it became a tight-knit group of people where we really learned from each other and supported each other, which I think also really embodied, right, this idea about relationships within the Sisters of St. Joseph. And so it was wonderful to see, I think, from my perspective, how the pilgrimage, we had these intentions about, coming to know and understand the charism, and we were very deliberate in the whole team of group leaders and Sister Joan and myself, sort of nurturing those things through the activities we were doing, the experiences we were having, but also through the daily evening reflections and that intentionality. And I think that really, became something that all of us sort of reflected on at the end of the pilgrimage, is that sense of being in relationship together and also fostering those relationships with others. Sister Linda, I see you have your hand up, so I'll turn to you for your question.
Well, it's two comments and then a question. The first comment you just talked about, Martha, because what I heard from those who were on the pilgrimage is how the charism was alive in the deepening of relationships, that there was something that you felt right away and were amazed at and continue to maintain those relationships even past this time. So that to me just speaks so much of the charism as it is already within each of you who went, but those of us who are on this Zoom call with you. The second comment was how impressed I was to hear how each of you felt transformed yourself. I especially liked your comment, Ryan, at the very beginning, when you talked about not only what it did for you to be there, but how it was going to help you be a better husband and father. I think when we talk about this charism and this mission that we as members of the community of St. Joseph have, it is all about the transformation within ourselves, and that we bring that, by that example, we help transform a world that is so in need of loving relationships and love and service for the dear neighbor without distinction. And I guess my question was, as you walked around this wonderful historic area, did you meet people who knew about Le Puy themselves, other than all of you? Did you meet someone else who was on a pilgrimage to meet Mother St. John Fontbonne, or to go to her house or kitchen? Kind of a simple question.
Panelists, anybody want to comment?
I could comment. Actually, a lot of people were unaware of the history within Le Puy. And not to say like I was, I was, trying to go around talking constantly to everyone I knew, but everyone who I spoke to, I met a few people who were on their own pilgrimages, but they weren't aware of like the Sisters of Saint Joseph. So when I shared that, they were all very also inspired. And so I think that was part of my journey and also spreading the charism.
Thanks, Sophie.
Great question, Sister Linda. Thank you. Sister Sean Peters has a question in the chat. How did you hear about the trip and what convinced you to say yes? And this is particularly to the students.
So I heard about our trip through the Service and Spirituality office at Fontbonne, and the campus minister at the time really was encouraging of me to go. She knew about my connection to the sisters. She knew that I was really fascinated by their story. And so I didn't really need much convincing. I was kind of just like, of course I'll go. Like, why wouldn't I go? So that's how I heard about it. But I felt right that when I was asked that I should go. So.
I transferred into Avila midway through my freshman year, so I missed out on our freshman seminar class, which is where all of our students hear about this trip. So I had no idea about it, and I was highly involved in our campus ministry. And Dave Armstrong, our campus ministry director, said, "Hey, I have a spot that I feel like you would be a great fit for." I took a leap of faith, and I'm very grateful that I did.
I actually had a friend go the year prior to me going, and she spoke in a trip that just Mount St. Mary's took, but she spoke so highly about it. And we had both bonded over our shared inspiration from the Sisters of St. Joseph. And so she was very adamant about, if the opportunity arises, you have to go. And luckily there was an application that then went out, and so I knew that I needed to apply for it, and then that's how I got the opportunity.
Yeah, and as you can hear, there's each campus had each student came into it, in different ways, but each campus had a different process of selecting, identifying students and what that looked like as well. Sister Noelle, I see your hand is up. So if you want to come off mute and share your question, that would be great.
Well, I'm interested. Didn't Andrew go on the pilgrimage too? Did you go on the pilgrimage, Andrew?
I did not.
Oh, I thought they said you went on the Camino. Because I noticed that the students are from different backgrounds, which I think is wonderful. Going to Europe and finding out that they probably are more included in the history than we from America, which I think gives our charism an international bent. That people from other countries other than Europe are involved. And I was wondering if the students picked up on that or the faculty.
Yeah, our group of students was very diverse, coming from different campuses as well as from different backgrounds and cultural identities. I think it's really one of the things that made our trip really special and unique, in that we were all coming from different places across the country, and then to have an international experience too, right? And some of our students have never had an international experience before. This was a new experience to travel across the country, across the ocean, or across geographical nation boundaries. And while others had you know, lots of experiences in other countries and traveling. So part of that is the learning from each other is what made us really grow together. And some of the students and trip leaders had more experiences than others of interacting with people there on the ground that were French as well too, but a whole wealth of experiences. Anybody want to add?
I'll just say that one thing that I appreciated, especially in our reflections and our sharing of the states of the heart, is that how our students were able to make the connections of the challenges that they face in their own city. So issues of poverty, of racism, of classism, of gun violence, that those problems, those sins were not unique to Philadelphia or to St. Louis or to Minneapolis, but that we were, through our common language and connection to the Sisters of St. Joseph and the justice issues that we work for on our own campuses, really able to hopefully try to meet those challenges. But I think through the diversity of experiences and especially locations, but seeing actually quite how similar we each were.
I was very interested in the connection with the kitchen, because when I walked into it, I went, this is my mother's kitchen, my grandmother's, and we're from Ireland. And it was a gathering place for tea and sharing what happened with your day, which is like the sharing of the heart. So the family connections just went boom for me across the world.
Yeah, that kitchen is kind of an ordinary place, right? The kitchen is an ordinary place in our daily lives, and yet the kitchen in the context in Le Puy, you know, has much more meaning to it behind it, and for many students that was very touching. Does anybody want to say more about their experience in the kitchen or add?
Yeah, I can add on to that. So after seeing the picture of it and Avila's ministry room, I was kind of like, okay, yeah, it's a kitchen. Like, it's just an ordinary kitchen. But after being there, I really felt the sense and connection with other students who share the same mission and values that I share. Even though I had met them just a few days prior. Yeah, I felt a deep sense of connection with everybody on that trip, everybody who had ever stepped foot in that room. And all the sisters who shared their hearts before. So that was really, really impactful for me.
For me, as I said, I've been there so many times. It hit me a different way this time as we would share meals together, that Jesus knew what he was doing when he brought the apostles together and shared that famous last meal. That in sharing together, in eating together, and being together, that I felt that so strongly in the kitchen this time in a way I never had before. So it was, and I know it's because of the connection we were making together, especially with the students.
And I was struck by the effort that it took to preserve it. Like, we had to go through what's now another facility to get there, and there were special rules about getting there. And I was thinking, man, through all these years, so much effort has gone into making sure it's still there for us to see, to witness. And I was grateful to Morgan for just saying, like, I too thought, what's the big deal about the kitchen? You know, and having seen pictures and not being so sure, like, how's this going to impact? But it so was impactful in its actual sense of, like, you could feel the reverberation of all the ancestors, but also that I was just aware of the devotion of so many to making sure we could still go to that space and to see it.
Well, our time is nearly up here. We just have another minute. I just want to thank our panelists. You know, it was really a privilege to be with this group of pilgrims They inspired me, they taught me, and I think they challenged, we challenged each other to grow in new ways. And so that was wonderful. So thank you to the generosity of Katie, Sophie, Isamar, Morgan, Ryan, Sister Carol, Joan, for being here today and sharing your stories with us, and Sister Joan as well. You know, please join me in giving them a round of applause, or, virtually. And thank you all for being willing to spend an hour out of your day to join us to learn more about the pilgrimage. One of the things that I think it's always hard to have a really wonderful, impactful experience and then not having people to share that with. And so we are grateful for you for witnessing, for hearing, about our adventures and our travels and the ways in which the pilgrimage touched our lives. So thank you for that. Sister Joan, did you have a final word here?
Only to say to everyone here, none of it would have happened, Martha, without you and your leadership. So bravo, and thank you for keeping the ACSSJ connection going.
Well, thank you. It's a pleasure to support the work of the association and support the work of the charism, and so glad to be with you here today. Thank you, and have a good rest of your day. Bye-bye.